Welcome to MTN Outdoors.
Hey, welcome everybody to this week's episode of MTN Outdoors. I'm once again your guide, Andy Curtis, and we are here at the top of Mount Helena for today's episode for two very good reasons. The first one is because it gave me an excuse to hike up here while on the clock. That's right, I'm getting paid for all this, and that's great. The second reason is I figured Mount Helena is a good representation of all the stories we're going to cover in today's show. For example, it can get kind of breezy up here on the top of Mount Helena. It can also get kind of breezy across much of the state. And we'll take a look at some unconventional forms of farming that are taking full advantage of that wind. And since Mount Helena is in Helena, we'll also take a look at a story about an unconventional form of trapping taking place in the city limits. And it's not for beaver or fox or muskrat or anything you might think of off the top of your head. It's for feral cats. So we'll have that story coming up. But first, before we get to those, they're not exactly cats, but these animals might be beloved by us Montanans even more. I'm talking about our deer and elk, especially during hunting season. And Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks recently released their Deer and Elk Hunter Survey opinion. Now, the surveys were sent out to 5,000 resident hunters where they can gauge their satisfaction with hunting and harvest opportunities here in the state. And there were just over 2,000 returned responses. The results found 73%, or just under 3/4, were satisfied with elk management. Response to access showed that 80% of respondents said access to hunt bull elk on public land was better than average. But that number drops to 40% for privately owned land. 60% of respondents felt that there were too many elk hunters in the state. Hunters said that the numbers of elk, both antlerless and bull elk, were greater on privately owned lands when compared to our public lands. Well, there's no shortage of mosquitoes here in Montana, and recently the Montana Department of Public Health and Human Services reported more West Nile virus in some areas of the state. Now, West Nile is typically transmitted by mosquitoes and can infect people and horses. So far this year, there have been 3 cases in people that have resulted in hospitalization. Those people sickened ranged from 30 years to 70 years old and lived in Dawson, Rosebud, and Yellowstone counties. Most cases of West Nile are minor and you will experience no symptoms. Around 1 in 5 people, though, will have minor symptoms, and 1 in 150 cases will be severe and can cause neurological disease and possibly death. Now, the best way to prevent the virus is to get rid of any standing water where mosquitoes like to breed. Use insect repellent, wear long pants and shirt sleeves, and if you can, avoid being outside at dusk and dawn when mosquitoes are most active. Though, for us hunters, that's a tough ask. And usually where there's no water, there's no mosquitoes, which is great, don't get me wrong. But the last time I checked, we need water to live. So when we don't have it, that's a big problem. Recently, a state committee got together to discuss the issue and take a look at drought conditions across Montana. MTN's Jonathan Ambarian was also there and has our story.
Leaders say a similar percentage of Montana is currently under drought compared with the same time last year. But while much of the state has seen improvement, that hasn't been the case in northwestern Montana.
Variability is the order of the day.
The Governor's Drought and Water Supply Advisory Committee met Thursday to go over updated conditions and the effects they're having on everything from stream flows to agriculture. Leaders said Montana's coming off of 2 years of serious drought, and much of the state was drought-free by the start of summer. But after a July that was among the driest on record statewide, and a May through July that were among the warmest, abnormally dry conditions were in place for much of western Montana and along the High Line.
They're important months, especially on the east side of the divide. And so that dried out and things changed quickly.
The most severe drought remains in the northwest corner of the state, where areas like the Flathead Basin are reporting some of their lowest stream flows for this time of year. Areas like south central Montana, on the other hand, have still seen strong moisture. Michael Downey with Montana DNRC says because the dry conditions started later, many agricultural producers are in better shape than last year. But through the state drought impact reporter, they've heard from some producers who are heavily affected, especially around Glacier and Toole counties.
Montana Drought Impacts Reporter is really important for us to zone in on those areas of drought that we might be missing in our metrics.
Downey says predicted moisture in the coming days will be a positive, but for the long-term drought outlook, the bigger effect will be from what comes this fall.
August tends to be dry. The fact that we're getting any moisture at all is certainly a relief, and I think is going to help our folks fighting wildfires. But it really is that September timeframe that is so important.
Leaders say about 71,000 acres have burned in wildfires across Montana so far this year. That's slightly higher than last year, but they note that much of the fire activity this year has been concentrated again in northwestern Montana. In the Helena Valley, Jonathan Amberian, MTN News.
Luckily, though, we have gotten some rain here recently, and the weather has been pretty nice. If that has you itching to get outside and maybe hit the trail, first I recommend coming here to Mount Helena. But if you want to go somewhere a little farther from home, MTN's Jackie Coffin has your story.
It's hard to resist the beauty of the Beartooths and this epic 26-mile path that traverses them north to south. I first braved the beaten path in 2021 and quickly realized the hype is well deserved.
This view isn't terrible though.
But the trail now looks much different. Last year's floods forever changed portions of the path, and you don't have to hike far to see it.
It was quite devastating to see all the damage, but it's just nice to be able to be back up here again.
These Billing sisters are among the many now returning to the trail for the first time in 14 months. It just reopened August 4th.
We were both educators, so Tasha, twin sister over here, wanted to show me this beautiful trail.
My husband and I joined them. About a mile and a half in, we run into a sudden trail break.
This is where the trail ends.
A traffic jam of hikers trying to figure out where to go.
And in fact, we were ready for our little, our spot we go to every year that is overlooking the waterfall, but I don't know if it exists anymore.
Trail crews from the Forest Service are building a new trail away from a boulder field that is now the only way to cross and continue to Elk Lake, the first of many lakes along the beaten path.
Below Elk Lake, it should be completed by the end of August.
The trail work is a sight to see as Forest Service crews use all types of tools to move a lot of rock. Fueled by huckleberries, we continue. Perhaps the biggest surprise, just up the trail.
I've wanted to come up here all summer. It's been my summer goal to check out what this lake looks like after the flood. Now, it's not much of a lake anymore.
The lake no longer exists. Instead, this is now just a wide spot in the river. You can see the difference in these photos. From Elk Lake, the Forest Service says you can continue up the trail, but it's a rough passage to Rimrock Lake, where a bridge was destroyed by the flood, and they don't recommend crossing by foot.
There's plans to repair the damage above Elk Lake, but that most likely will not start until 2024.
Despite the changes, the beaten path is just as stunning as it's always been. The jewel of the Beartooths and a bucket list hike every Montanan should take.
It's absolutely gorgeous.
In East Rosebud, Jackie Coffin, MTN News.
All right, and that brings us to this week's MTN Outdoors trivia question, which doesn't really have to do with lakes so much, but it does have to do with elk. So here we go. How much does a typical Rocky Mountain bull elk weigh? Is it A, 1,000 pounds, B, 200 pounds, or C, 700 pounds? Now this should be an easy question to answer, especially around here, but if you can't remember, we'll have it for you when we come back.
We now return to MTN Outdoors.
Whew. Hey everybody, and welcome back to this week's episode of MTN Outdoors. Thanks for sticking around with us. I'm once again your guide, Andy Curtis, and we are here from the top of Mount Helena for this week's episode. Well, I guess, technically we're walking down Mount Helena now. And yes, I can already hear you asking the question and rolling your eyes. We did start the show up at the top of Mount Helena, all right? So if you missed that, catch us on YouTube. Just search MTN Outdoors or search KTVH. You can find it real easily. And no, it's not green screen, okay, or any special effects. I hiked up here very fast and efficiently this morning. Also, before the break, we asked you this week's MTN Outdoors trivia question. And because it's getting close to that time of the year, today's question is about one of my all-time favorite animals here in Montana, the elk. So if you missed it, here it is one more time. How much does a typical Rocky Mountain bull elk weigh? Is it A, 1,000 pounds, B, 200 pounds, or C, 700 pounds? Now, if you're gearing your pack up for elk season right now, you might want to think about this one. And if you do think the answer is 700 pounds, then you are absolutely right. Now, the Rocky Mountain elk isn't the only type of elk. For example, the Thule elk weighs around 400 pounds, and the Roosevelt elk comes in at a whopping whoppity weight of 900 pounds. So make sure you have the right equipment with you if you're going out in the mountains here to start September. And sure, we produce a lot of elk here in Montana, but you know what else we produce a lot of? It sure seems like, at least, wind. Some people a lot more than others. So this next story is about finally trying to put some of that wind to good use. MTN's Ryan Gamboa has more.
Since 2008, the Glacier 1, 2, and Rimrock sites along the Highline are home to 266 wind turbines. It's an industry that cuts down on the carbon footprint, but provides a financial cushion for Montana's agriculture producers. Aimed at the Rocky Mountains and directly into the Chinook winds, you'll find the Glacier 1 wind farm.
So it actually started for Berkshire in 2020. We purchased the Montana-Alberta tie line from the previous owner, and one of these wind farms connects directly into that transmission line.
Ed Ryan is the president and CEO of BHE Canada, and under Berkshire Hathaway Energy are 3 locations, Glacier 1, 2, and Rimrock, that sit in Glacier and Toole counties. A 34-kilometer, 300-megawatt transmission line located between Great Falls and Lethbridge, Alberta. Andy Welchel, wind farm operations manager for Rimrock.
Annually, if we were running at about a 40% capacity factor, which is, an average of the entire year spread out, that would be approximately 120,000 homes we can supply power for.
Like any other commodity, the energy is sold at the meter to a third-party power marketer.
And that third party could be sending the energy to Montana, it could be sending it to the West Coast, it could be sending it to Alberta, and that would change literally by the day. So in 2026, Berkshire Hathaway Energy will market that energy, and we will predominantly export it to Canada.
Despite the energy predominantly leaving the area, there are incentives for having turbines on your property. Aaron Torgerson, an Etheridge landowner and farmer, was apprehensive before his turbine installation, providing financial incentives and access roads.
A lot less intrusive. They maintain roads, they gravel the roads. That's a huge thing. And then it's only a tenth of an acre. So it's not really taken up that much footprint. The footprint is very small.
Wind farming creates clean electricity, but for wildlife conservationists, it can raise questions on its impact to migrating birds. Manager of project development, Steve Laufenberg, explains.
We constructed permanent avian shelters that we call. They're monitoring shelters, and we have biologists in those shelters full time, and they have computer tablets in the field with them, and they're able to curtail turbines when we have any eagles coming through.
Torgerson believes that turbines have been a positive addition to his operation. By building close relationships with BHE Montana, he encourages others to get involved.
As a business owner and a farmer rancher in Toole and Glacier County, anything that we can bring in business-wise is something I think we should look at.
In Etheridge, Ryan Gamboa, MTN News.
Well, the director for the Bureau of Land Management recently made a stop here in Montana to showcase some of the work being done in the western half of the state. MTN's Catherine Raleigh has our story.
Money from the Inflation Reduction Act has been granted to this plot of land here. And the director of the Bureau of Land Management, Director Stone Manning, was here in Missoula today to announce what money has been allocated to where.
Putting people to work on our public lands, making them better for future generations, like that is an investment that's going to pay off.
Stone Manning says they are investing in the people and the land in the Blackfoot corridor.
And that's real investment that is going to return, not only put people to work, pay people to get on the ground doing good work, but that work is going to pay off literally for years to come in the form of fish habitat and wildlife habitat and cold, clean water.
Stone Manning says the outdoor recreation industry in Montana brings in roughly $7 billion to Montana's economy. And through this money, the BLM plans to protect the industry through restoring and properly managing the lands.
And so we have to protect that value. We have to protect that investment. And one of the ways to protect it is to restore habitat. You know, the good Lord is not making more land, so we should probably restore the lands that we have to ensure that folks, when they come, they still have the same opportunity that we have today.
There's also an effort to restore a plot of land near Johns Root to a meadow of bitterroot and camas, both plants that were harvested by the Salish and Kootenai tribes.
And now to understand what the project is going to bring here with the camas, and it just means a lot to us as a tribe and all the work that goes into it, and especially having employment and other things that go along with that. It's very important for the tribes to know that people respect what we used to have as homeland and now as Aboriginal territory.
Near Johns Root, Catherine Rowley, MTN News.
We now return to MTN Outdoors.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Now, we here in Montana know how important ranching is, not just to our economy, but to the entire country. Unfortunately, though, the numbers are showing that many young people aren't jumping back in the saddle. Montana State University is looking to change that. MTN's Jane McDonald has our story.
It's been probably one of the best experiences I've had in my life so far. I can't really put a value on the experiences and the things I've learned. It's just, I can't really describe it. It's kind of one of those surreal kind of things.
At Granger Ranches in Ennis, they've had Montana State University interns come join the ranch for a couple of years now, meaning early mornings, some late nights, and there's always something new each and every day.
Sometimes I get to kind of do some tractor work, sometimes we're with cows, pasture management, everything. Absolutely everything I can learn.
But the experience is not just about how to manage cattle.
And I've learned a lot about myself and what I'm good at and what my strengths are.
Anybody that truly wants to be in this business can. They just have to be very creative about how they get into it.
And that rings true for recent MSU graduate Ian Estebar.
I did not grow up near a ranch. I started working in ranches around my sophomore, junior year of high school. So I came up to Montana for school and I just wanted to work at a ranch. So I didn't really have any background in it whatsoever, just a few years experience, that was about it.
Getting young people interested in agriculture is crucial, but manager Billy Whitehurst sees the price of land as a big obstacle for young people trying to get into the business.
You know, working capital to be able to own their own is a huge issue. Land prices go up and recreation drives the value more than production. I think that's going to continue to be an issue.
But for the meantime, the interns on Granger Ranches continue to soak up every skill, every lesson, and each memory that they can before they head back to school or before they head on to their next adventure.
That there's a lot of people who have come before me who have a whole bunch of things that they know that I don't know, and I just really want to find the best mentors I can because I'm new into this industry, so I kind of just want to keep learning and, keep going.
In Ennis, Jane McDonald, MTN News.
All right, this next story is a little unique, but it does take place outside and does involve the trapping of animals. Just probably not the ones you're thinking of. I'll let MTN's Tom Buchanan explain.
Helena Police Department is beginning this season's trap, neuter, and release program for Helena's feral cats. Instead of simply trapping and killing feral cats, the Trap, Neuter, Release, or TNR program works to stop disease from spreading and reduce population growth through vaccinations and spaying and neutering.
These cats that we're trapping and fixing and releasing back, they don't want to be in a home. So beyond the fact that we just don't really have room to house cats that aren't socialized, It's just not in their best interest.
Beginning this Tuesday evening, Animal Control from Helena Police Department will begin laying traps on private property in Helena's Lower East Side neighborhood. Folks in the immediate vicinity of the traps are advised to keep their cats indoors for the evening. Animal control officers work with folks in neighborhoods who know where these cats are and who may sometimes feed them as well. Traps are typically set in the shade and monitored closely in order to ensure the safety of the animal. Cats that are trapped are then taken to the Lewis and Clark Humane Society, where they are fixed and vaccinated. Then the cats are released back in the original trapping area. There are a couple reasons for these cats' re-release. For one, most of the animals are not domesticated, and neither human nor animal would much enjoy attempting cohabitation, though occasionally the Humane Society will attempt to rehome kittens. Additionally, if you simply remove the cats from their territory, different groups of feral cats will claim that territory. The TNR program allows for the existing feral cats to live out the rest of their days without creating more offspring.
Whether it's food or shelter or safety, there's something there that is attracting those cats. So with that being said, if we just remove them, other cats will come into that area and just start that repopulation growth again. By placing these cats back after they've been spayed and neutered, it prevents that growth from happening, but it also prevents that repopulation of new cats in that area from moving into it.
Again, officials recommend keeping your cat indoors if you live within the vicinity of the trapping program. Reporting in Helena, Tom Buchanan, MTN News.
Well, that should just about do it for us here this week at MTN Outdoors. Thanks again, everybody, for spending some time with me. And remember, as you hit the trails or do anything in the great outdoors here in Montana, send me a picture to andy.curtis@ktvh.com, and you could see yourself at the end of a future episode. And with that, it's time for this week's MTN Outdoors Brag Board. And we have a very special MTN Outdoors Brag Board this week for two good reasons. The first one is because our entry comes from MTN's very own Ryan Gamboa. And the second reason is because Mr. Gamboa had a very nice encounter with not only moose, but some bighorn sheep up at Glacier National Park. And here's a good learning opportunity for everybody. Do what Ryan does. Keep your distance and use the zoom on your phone to take pictures. Thanks a lot for that, Ryan. And, next time you get some excellent wildlife footage, make sure you send it my way. All right, until next week, everybody, stay safe, and I'll see you out there.